There is a moment no one prepares you for. Not the birthday, not the gray hair, not the first morning your body asks for more time before it agrees to move. It is smaller than all of those. It is the moment you look at your hands doing something ordinary, and for just a second you do not quite recognize them. Not grief, not fear, something quieter than either. Something that has been sitting underneath the ordinary days for longer than you realized. A question the body has been asking, one you have not yet found words for. Here is what is strange about that moment. The discomfort is not about your hands. It is not about the body slowing down. It is not about time passing. It is about a particular kind of fear, one that almost no one names out loud. The fear that the person you have been working so hard to be is somehow running out of ground to stand on. You have never said this to anyone, perhaps, but you have felt it. In the early mornings when the house is very still, in the pauses between things. In the way a question rises, and then you let it pass because there is no easy answer waiting. What if the fear is pointing at something true, but not the truth you think it is? What if what feels like an ending is actually a door already open, and you are already standing in it? This is not a promise. It is something older than a promise. And it begins not with a solution. It begins with what you are already doing right now. There is a cup of tea cooling on the table as you read this, or there is light coming through a window. Or there is the sound of something ordinary in the background, a bird, a car passing, the hum of a refrigerator, just that. Not because it is beautiful, because it is here. Buddhism begins here. Not in temples, not in scripture, in the cup, in the light, in the sound, in what is actually present before the mind adds its story. The Vietnamese teacher Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a book whose title many people find strange the first time they hear it. No death, no fear. Not do not be afraid of death. Not death is not as bad as you think. No death. He was pointing at something that takes a moment to arrive. He writes of a cloud. When a cloud disappears from the sky, we do not say it has died. We know it has become rain. It has become river. It has become the ocean. It has become the vapor that will one day become cloud again. The cloud does not end. It continues in a different form. He asks, can you find a birth in that cloud? Can you find a death, or is there only transformation? This is not poetry offered as comfort. This is an observation about what is actually true, and it applies to you, not metaphorically, literally. The person you were at 30 has already transformed. The cells in your body have changed. The fears you carried then are different from the fears you carry now. The loves have deepened or faded or become something you could not have predicted. You have already died and been reborn many times without anyone marking the occasion, and you are still here, still breathing, still the one noticing. Let's go back to the hands. The hands you looked at in the kitchen. Feel them now if you are willing. Turn them over slowly. The skin is different than it was at 20, at 40, at 60. There is texture here that was not here before. This is not failure. This is record. Every line is a season you moved through. Every mark is a task completed, a person held, a day endured. The body is not falling behind. The body has been faithful. Buddhism calls the body the first foundation of mindfulness. Not because it is the most spiritual thing, but because it is the most honest. The body does not lie about where you are. It does not pretend. It does not perform. It simply tells you quietly what is needed now. And what it is asking for in these years is not less respect. It is more listening. This is the first thing to understand about self-care in later life. It is not maintenance. It is relationship. Before you rise in the morning, pause, not for long. Just a moment. Lie still and feel the breath entering, the chest rising, the air that arrived without your asking for it. You have been breathing your whole life and the breath has never missed a single turn. That faithfulness deserves a moment of recognition. Then, slowly, greet the body, not with demand, with courtesy. Reach the arms gently overhead. Roll the ankles. Draw one knee toward the chest. These are not exercises. They are the morning equivalent of saying hello. The body has carried you far. It is still here, still trying. Meet it with the same care you would give a very old friend who has walked with you across decades and asks, now, only for a little more patience. There is something that happens in later life that is rarely named. Meals become mechanical, not because the food is bad, because the attention has gone somewhere else. You eat standing at the counter, or in front of something that moves on a screen, or alone in the way that is quiet but not peaceful, the kind of quiet that feels more like absence than rest. Food that once brought pleasure starts to feel like a task, and something in the body registers this, not just in digestion, in mood, in the sense of being cared for. Because eating, when done with presence, is one of the simplest acts of self-respect available to us. In Zen, meals were treated as ceremony, not because the food was extraordinary. Because the attention was, you do not need a monastery for this. You need a chair, a plate, a moment before the first bite, 3 slow breaths, not to relax on command, just to arrive. To let the nervous system know this moment matters. You are not rushing, you are here. Look at the food, its color, its warmth. Notice the smell before the taste. Let the first bite be slow enough to actually taste. There is a Japanese concept sometimes called eating until you are mostly satisfied, not stuffed, not deprived, just enough. The body as it ages needs this more, not less food, more attention to the food. If you eat alone, and many do, set the table anyway. Use a plate. Light something if you have it. Sit down properly. Treat yourself as a guest who has traveled far and deserves a good meal, because you have, and you do. Movement in later life is rarely about fitness. There is something in the culture, especially for those who were active, who worked with their bodies, who measured themselves by what they could do. There is a grief that arrives when the body cannot do what it once did. A comparison is made, the present body is found lacking, and slowly, subtly, movement begins to disappear, not all at once, just less and less. Because why participate in something that reminds you of what you have lost? But this is the misunderstanding. Movement in later life is not performance, it is participation. The body does not need to prove anything. It only needs to be invited back into the rhythm of living. The Buddha himself walked long distances, slow, deliberate walking. Not to reach a destination faster, to be fully present with each step. Feel the foot meeting the ground, the small shift of weight from heel to toe. The way the body balances itself without being asked to. This is a kind of miracle happening continuously, so familiar we no longer notice it. 10 minutes is enough. 20 is generous. The hallway of your home is enough. Indoors, outdoors, rain or sun, movement does not judge where it happens. If standing is difficult, a chair becomes a partner. Gentle arm lifts. Careful leg extensions. Sitting down and rising slowly, which is itself a practice of strength and dignity. And if all you can do is stand by the window for 5 minutes, feel the light on your face, that counts. That is participation. That is the body saying yes to being alive. No measurement. No comparison. No falling behind. Here is something that takes courage to hear. Many people after a certain age quietly stop learning, not because they cannot. Because somewhere a belief took root, that learning belongs to the young. That curiosity has an expiration date, that their years of experience have given them all the answers they need. And slowly, without anyone noticing, the mind closes like a window in winter. Buddhism calls this one of the most subtle dangers, not anger, not greed. Those are visible. But the quiet conviction that you already know enough, that one is invisible, and it is the most isolating of all. Because when the mind stops asking questions, conversations become one-directional. The world stops surprising you, and the days begin to feel like copies of each other. Beginner's mind, the Zen teachers called it, is not the mind of someone who knows nothing. It is the mind of someone who remains open to knowing more. Even the most senior disciples of the Buddha asked questions of younger monks, not out of ignorance, out of the understanding that the truth is vast and no single life can exhaust it. What would it mean to return to that openness? A few pages of something that surprises you each day. A question asked to someone younger, genuinely curious about their answer. A return to something you were interested in decades ago but never had time to pursue. You have time now, not unlimited time, but time of a different quality, time that no longer needs to justify itself by being productive. That is a rare thing. Use it to learn something you will never need to perform for anyone. Learn it just because it is alive in you. The heart, by this stage of life, is rarely empty. It carries decades, love that was given and not returned the way you hoped, grief that came too fast to be processed properly, words spoken in anger that you would take back if you could, words never spoken that you wish you had, regrets that arrive in the early hours of the morning when the defenses are down. These do not disappear by being ignored. What we do not allow ourselves to feel does not dissolve. It accumulates. It becomes the background tension that makes everything slightly harder than it needs to be. Buddhism does not ask you to feel nothing. It asks you to feel honestly. There is a practice called rain. It is not complicated. Recognize what is present. Name it without judgment. I am feeling grief. I am feeling resentment. I am feeling loneliness. Not I am broken or I should not feel this. Just this is here. Allow it to be here. Do not argue with it. Do not explain it away. Do not rush it toward resolution. Just allow. Investigate with kindness. Where does this live in the body? Is there a weight in the chest, a tightness in the jaw, a heaviness somewhere below the ribs? Not to analyze, just to notice, to let the feeling know it has been seen, and then nurture. A hand placed over the heart, a slow breath, the simplest self-compassion. This is hard and I am still here. Forgiveness often gets misunderstood. People think forgiveness means deciding that what happened was acceptable. It does not. Forgiveness is the act of putting down a stone you have been carrying because the stone is heavy, and it is your hands that hurt. The Buddha described it this way. Holding onto anger is like gripping a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. The heat is yours. You do not put the stone down for the person who gave it to you. You put it down for your own hands, for your own life. The stories you have been carrying, not the people, not the events, the weight of the stories about them, those can be set down, not forgotten, not erased, simply no longer carried everywhere. And now something practical, because the mind in later life sometimes needs not a teaching but a task, something small and immediate, something that asks nothing and returns something real. Tonight, before you sleep, sit on the edge of the bed, or lie still for a moment after the light goes off, and bring your attention very gently to the feet, just the feet. Feel whatever is there, warmth, pressure, the texture of the sheet. No interpretation, just what is actually there. Then move upward, the ankles, the calves, not analyzing, not judging. Just meeting each part of the body the way you would greet a quiet room you have just entered. When you reach the chest, rest there. Feel the breath, in and out, the chest rising with the inhale, releasing with the exhale. You do not need to sleep immediately. You do not need to think anything particular, just this. The body, the breath, the quiet. This is not a sleep trick. This is an act of recognition, a way of saying, I am here, this body is here. We have made it through another day. That is enough. Sleep in this stage of life is not a failure when it resists. Night thoughts are often distorted, enlarged by the dark, stripped of the context that softens them. No decisions need to be made in the dark. No problems need to be solved between midnight and 3. Rest is not weakness. Rest is the act of trusting that you do not need to hold everything together all the time. The Buddha spoke of sleep as a small daily letting go. Each night, the hands open, the holding ceases. The self that has been managing everything all day is allowed to rest. This is not a small thing. It is a rehearsal, a gentle, daily reminder that there is something in you that does not require effort to exist. Now we arrive at the part of this that is hardest to say without saying it wrongly, so we will try to say it very carefully. Thich Nhat Hanh held a sheet of paper in his hands once and asked, "Can you find a cloud in here?" The audience thought it was a riddle. He said, "Look more carefully. The paper required a tree to grow. The tree required rain. The rain required a cloud. The cloud is in the paper, not as a metaphor, as reality. To look at the paper and see only paper is to miss most of what is there." He called this interbeing, the recognition that nothing exists separately from everything else. And then he asked the harder question, can you find the paper's death? When you burn a sheet of paper, what happens? Smoke rises, heat is released, ash remains, but where is the paper gone? It is in the smoke, it is in the warmth of the room. It is in the ash that will become soil. It has not ended, it has continued in a different form. And he asked, is there a birth in this paper? Is there a death? Or is there only continuation? This teaching is not designed to take away grief. If you have lost someone, you know the grief is real. The absence is real. The chair at the table that is no longer occupied, that is real. But Thich Nhat Hanh is offering something alongside the grief. He is saying, look more carefully. The person you loved, are they entirely absent? Or are they present in the way you hold a cup? In the words you find yourself saying that sound like them. In the morning light that you both once watched from the same window, the cloud does not disappear. It becomes rain. And the rain becomes you, and you are still here. This is not a comfort invented to ease pain. This is an observation about what seems to actually be true when you look long enough and carefully enough. No birth, no death. No beginning, no end. Only transformation. Only the cloud becoming rain, becoming river, becoming sea, becoming vapor, becoming cloud again. And within all of that, something witnessing. Something that has been here through all of it. Something that does not age the way the body ages. You know this something. You have always known it. It is the one doing the noticing right now. And so we come, finally, to the fear. The fear that aging means becoming less, that the best is behind you, that it is too late. Let us sit with that fear for a moment, not to argue with it, just to look at it clearly. The fear says, look at what has been lost. The body is slower, the future is shorter. The roles that once defined you are loosening, and this is true. Certain things have changed. Certain things will not return, but look at what else is true. You are not performing anymore. Not in the way you once had to. The urgency to prove yourself, to accumulate, to compete, to be seen, that is quieter now. And in that quietness, something that was always there becomes audible for the first time. The Buddha described it as the inner lamp, not created, not earned, not deserved, already there, always there, only visible when the noise settles enough to see it. This is not a stage of decline. This is a stage of seeing more clearly. When the autumn trees release their leaves, we do not call them diminished. We say they are beautiful in a way that summer was not. When a river slows near the sea, we do not say it has given up. We say it is arriving. You are arriving, not at an ending, at a different quality of presence. The Dharma does not measure worth by speed or productivity or years remaining. It measures only awareness. And awareness can deepen at any age. It deepens most often in the years that have the most stillness in them. Here is what it might look like, not as an idea, but as a morning. You wake before the light is fully in the room. The house is quiet. You do not reach for the phone. You lie still for a moment, just that, the ceiling, the breath, the body still warm from sleep. You notice you are here, not in a dramatic way. Just here, breathing, present, alive in a quiet room, you rise slowly. There is no rush. The day has not asked anything of you yet. You make something warm, tea perhaps, the kettle. The sound of water. You carry the cup to wherever the light is best and you sit with it. You do not read. You do not plan. You just sit with the cup and the light and let the day begin without forcing it. This is not laziness. This is not decline. This is the harvest. This is what the years have been moving toward, if you allow it. A quality of presence that was not possible when you were moving too fast to stop. This morning, with its cup and its quiet, is not a smaller life. It is a more honest one. Somewhere in the Theravada Suttas, there is a story about a monk called Bahia. He had traveled far to find the Buddha. He had almost died on the journey, and when he finally arrived, he begged for teaching. The Buddha said, in brief, in seeing, just seeing. In hearing, just hearing. In sensing, just sensing. In knowing, just knowing. Nothing added, nothing subtracted, just what is actually there. Bahia understood immediately. In that moment, he was free. Not free from difficulty. Not free from the body. Free from the layer of interpretation that had been sitting between him and direct experience. The teaching was not about having no thoughts. It was about meeting experience without immediately turning it into a story. The sound of the kettle, just that sound. The weight of the cup, just that weight. The light through the window, just that light. Not light that means another day is beginning and I'm getting older. Not light that triggers a calculation about what is left. Just light. And in that simplicity, something opens. Not a mystical opening. A real one. The kind you may have felt briefly sometimes in moments you did not plan. When you were doing something ordinary and for a moment the mind became very quiet and what remained was just this. Whatever was in front of you. The garden. The cup. The face of someone you love. Just that without the interpretation. Those moments are not accidents. They are not lucky breaks in the noise. They are what is always available. They are what remains when the adding stops. So here is what can be held from all of this. Not as a list of lessons, as a single continuous thread. The body is not failing. It is communicating. Meet it with listening instead of judgment. It has carried you faithfully, and faithfulness deserves recognition. Food, movement, sleep, these are not maintenance routines. They are relationships. They are the way the self participates in its own care. And in later life, this care becomes less about discipline and more about respect. The emotions held for decades deserve to be met honestly. Not performed, not fixed, just allowed to exist long enough that the body can stop working so hard to contain them. Learning, curiosity, the beginner's mind, these do not belong only to the young. They belong to whoever has not yet closed the door, and the door can be reopened. It can always be reopened. And underneath all of this, beneath the body's changes and the emotions and the memories and the fears about time, there is something that has not aged. Something that has been the one noticing through all of it. The you that watched yourself learn to walk. The you that sat in grief and in joy. The you that is reading this now. That one has not diminished. That one is not going anywhere. Thich Nhat Hanh writes, "The wave does not need to search for water. It already is water. It has always been water. Even as it rises, even as it falls, even as it merges back into the sea, it is water. You are the wave, and you are also the water, and the water does not end when the wave returns. It simply continues. No birth, no death, only transformation. Only the faithful continuation of what was always here. You do not need to believe this. You only need to look carefully at your own experience and notice slowly, without rushing, whether something in you already knows it is true. If something here stayed with you, you may already know where it did. Sometimes one moment remains, even after everything else fades. I'll see you in the next one.